Howdy y'all, this is Losman here, and I'm putting together another one of my lazy Sunday movie roundups. Now, this time I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something more or less the same, but I'm going to have some other topics to throw in besides movies I watch. I just finished watching the very last episode of Game of Thrones, and wow. I know it's going to get a lot of people talking. I know last week's episode had people talking and not too happy at that. But you know what? It's a grand story. And I remember the first time I ever watched Game of Thrones back when it first came on, I believe it was 2011. I remember my brother contacting me and telling me, "Hey man, you got to check out this new show on HBO. It's got like dragons and swords and really cool stuff." I mean, he described it as kind of like Lord of the Rings only, and but it was like wow. So basically, I checked out the first two episodes, and then a couple of days later, me and my brother went out and bought the books because we found out there were books. We started reading them and tearing through them, and let's just say it's been a nice journey. I mean, Game of Thrones is definitely one of the most important TV series in history of entertainment. Definitely HBO. I mean, HBO didn't want it to end. I mean, that's going to be their cash cow for quite some time. So basically, I've got my shirt on for Game of Thrones. Got my Game of Thrones gear here. Even got the first season of Game of Thrones on a Blu-ray right here. Ned Stark. I know someone asked me earlier what was my who's my favorite character of all time, and I mean, there's a lot of good characters on that show. You had Arya, you had Tyrion, you had Jon Snow, and Daenerys, and of course Ned Stark. I mean, to me, it was always Ned Stark. My cell phone basically has Ned Stark on the background, and it's been that way since I first watched that episode because it summed it up perfectly. Basically, the cover on my cell phone is going to be exactly what was shown earlier. It's basically Ned Stark sitting on the Iron Throne, contemplating, the tall task of the responsibility of being hand of the king. Now, this past week, I made a really concerted effort to start watching more movies. I noticed that I'm falling a little behind on my 300 watch, and the end of June is going to be the halfway point, and if I want to get to 150 movies by that time, I'm going to have to make a serious push and start watching movies. So that's what I started doing. Started watching some more movies. The movies I started out with for the week included some crazy movies, that like Joe Bob Briggs show and some other fun ones. What I started out with was a classic movie from the 1960s, Mario Bava's Black Sabbath. Now, Black Sabbath is a movie that was in Italian. I imagine there's an English dubbed version, but the one I saw was in Italian. It has Boris Karloff as a mysterious individual hosting three tales of terror, and each tale of terror is in a different time frame. You have one that takes place in the modern era. You have one that takes place in what could be like the 15th century, and then another one that could take place in the 19th century or even the early 20th century. All three tales are pretty good stories. I mean, it's a really good movie, and it's one of those movies where if you're not sure about origins of terror and horror, it's definitely one to look into. Mario Bava is one of the great directors of horror films, going back to the 1960s with Black Sunday and Planet of the Vampires and some of the early giallos that came out. I mean, he was a master director, and his son Lamberto Bava is also a pretty good director in his own right. So if you want to get into some good old school horror, Mario Bava is a good place to a good director to seek out. I mean, there's some great movies out there. Another movie I checked out, and this is one that kind of threw me at first. I remember last year everyone talking about a movie called The Final Girls, and of course when I was seeking it out, I thought I had found the right movie until I started wondering, why is this movie called Final Girl, not Final Girls? Well, I finally got around to watching Final Girl. I watched Final Girls originally, and if you haven't seen Final Girls, you should. It's one of the best metal horror movies in the past few years. Great cast, great story, great everything. It's an amazing story, and it's fun. It's a great story, but we're not talking about that movie. We're talking about Final Girl. Now, Final Girl is a movie with Abigail Breslin and Wes Bentley. It was made in 2015, so roughly about the same time as The Final Girls. It concerns a young lady who is trained by a mysterious teacher to in certain skills of defense, and those skills basically involve um, you know, martial arts type, and well, basically protecting herself. Being able to handle herself in situations where she may have to deal with, being attacked, being in a situation where you're not in control. So basically, it's a movie that a lot of people may overlook because it's not the Final Girls. It's Final Girl. It's not a bad movie. I mean, it's not a traditional horror movie. It's more of it's more akin to actually it kind of reminded me of La Femme Nikita, a French movie from the early 1990s, and it's not a bad story. I mean, if you want to, check it out, it's pretty interesting. I mean, Abigail Breslin, you know her from Zombieland, and Wes Bentley. He was in the Hunger Games, well, the first Hunger Games movie, and he was also in American Beauty. I mean, great actor. Very very creepy individual. I mean, he's got that kind of like that that quality to him that's very creepy. Now, some other movies I checked out. I looked up a movie called Shrooms, which was a movie that a number of people were talking about on Twitter, and it's a fun little movie. It's not what I expected. It's kind of a rural horror movie. You have a group of Americans going out in the woods of Ireland, and they all get stoned on mushrooms, and bad things happen. And let's just say that it's one of those movies where go into it cold. Don't read up on it. Just watch it. It's a really good story. I mean, it's a little different. I mean, it's kind of like watching Friday the 13th or one of those stories. It takes place in the woods in the forest. But you know what? Like I said, just go into it fresh, and you'll enjoy it. It's really good. Now, another movie I watched, and this one was when I had on my watch list for a while. It's the Berberian Sound Studio. Now, this movie is this is an interesting movie. I had mentioned Giallos earlier in reference to Mario Bava. The Berberian Sound Studio is kind of like a nice little homage to the Giallo style. It's about an English sound engineer who is brought in to work on a movie in the early 1970s under the auspices of working on a movie about an equestrian, story, about horses, something that he probably really enjoys. Instead, he soon learns that no, that's not the movie they're doing, and it's essentially a giallo movie that they're working on. And it's a really good story. Toby Jones is in it. If you don't know Toby Jones, he's a really good actor. He played Truman Capote in one of the movies about Truman Capote, and he was also in another movie I liked called Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Great actor. Check it out. It's a really good story. I mean, it's a good character study. It's kind of like one of those psychological thrillers that delves into the madness that can ensue when you're basically put to work doing something that you're not too excited about. I mean, it's a good story. I mean, check it out. It's really good. Another movie I was looking for, because I'm looking for movies I've never seen before, and as part of my Losman 300, I'm basically searching the various streaming networks for movies that I hadn't seen before. And there was a movie called Welcome to Willits, I believe. The reason why I was drawn to it is because I was flipping through and I thought, ooh, who's that pretty actress, So quite literally sometimes, yeah, it's all it takes to get me to watch a horror movie. Put a pretty girl on the screen and I'll be watching it. Welcome to Willits is a interesting little movie. It's basically kind of like one of those stories about paranoia. It involves a young girl visiting a relative, and this relative is a kind of a one of those country boys, who got a little business, that he has. He's basically growing marijuana, and he's not too happy that there's some characters, kind of like stealing his ganja, and he thinks that they might be of extraterrestrial origin. It's an interesting story. It's I thought it was I liked it. It was different. It was fun. Interesting cast, and it's definitely worth checking out. And the last movie that I checked out this week, and this is one that I've had on the watch list for a while, and I've been wanting to check it out, and I finally found it. It's Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer is a movie that has garnered a lot of attention. It's a sci-fi thriller, a really good story. If you've never heard of it, it involves a train, a super train that travels around the world after a kind of an apocalyptic disaster has occurred. Basically, Earth is covered in snow. All plant life has perished, and you've got this train that's literally like Noah's Ark, basically traveling the world, and what you have is a social order on the train. You know, you've got the people in the front who are the elite, and the people in the back who are basically the garbage. So it's a great story. It's directed by I believe it's a Korean director. I can't look up his name right now. It's a really good story though. It stars let's see who was in that movie. There's a lot of good people in that movie. It's Chris. Was it Chris? Not Chris Pine, but Chris Evans from Captain America. He is in the movie, and there's a great cast. It's a really good story. I mean, it was really engaging. I mean, I sat down, put it on, and just watching, and I was just wow. It's an amazing movie. It's really good story. Once you get past the fact of damn, how much stuff can you have on a train? And it's such a good story that apparently there's a TV show for Snowpiercer, so it's definitely a good story. Check it out. It's great. I mean, comes really highly recommended. Now, that's for the movies I watched this week. Now, one of the things I forgot to do last week when I was at the Texas Frightmare weekend was I forgot to show you one of my prized possessions that I now have. I have this copy of Reanimator. I believe it is an Arrow release. But what makes it unique is the autographs. I got some pretty good autographs on there. Barbara Crampton, Bruce Abbott, and Jeffrey Combs all autographed it. So this is going to be a prized possession in my collection. And not to mention the fact that Reanimator is a great movie. Now, one of the things I'm going to talk about now is you have a lot of discussions out there about, what are some of your favorite movies. And, being the Losman, I like to be able to reach out to people and, get them interested in watching horror movies. So I'm going to talk about some of the movies that are on my best list, my all-time favorite movies. And, first off, I'm going to start off with a classic. It's not horror, but let's just say this got me started when I was 5 years old. What can you say about this movie? Now, you notice I'm covering up a certain portion of the movie. I'm covering up the alternate title that they gave to this movie because, as far as I'm concerned, Star Wars is the only title. There's no Episode 4. There's no New Hope. None of that nonsense. 1977. I was 5 years old. Wonderland Theater in San Antonio, Texas. My cousin Eloy took me to go see... He took me to the movies. I asked him when we were going to go see. He's like, no, check it out. Come with me. Well, he said it was going to be a fun movie. So, hey, I was 5 years old. My cousin, who I thought was the coolest cousin ever, was taking me to go see a movie. So we went to the movie theater, and the first poster I saw, and this is funny, was for The Spy Who Loved Me. So I thought, oh, cool. That is so neat. I am so excited. He's like, no, that's not what we're watching. What? Darn. So we were going to go see another movie, and I didn't see the poster. So, basically sat down, and wow. What can be said about Star Wars that hasn't already been said? Well, yeah, that's the poster right there. That's the classic poster if you've never seen it before. I think, yeah, that's an amazing poster. Yeah, well, let's just say, the moment that Star Destroyer flew across the screen, yow. Wow. I mean, 5-year-old me loved science fiction. I loved spaceships. I loved Star Trek. I loved Space 1999. Anything with spaceships. And believe me, Star Wars was the holy experience of holy experiences. I mean, literally. I'm 47 now, and I still remember every bit of that movie. Watching it, in the theater. I mean, just amazing. I think I saw it like 4 times in the theater. And wow, I mean, it's amazing. So definitely Star Wars is one of my all-time favorite movies. That just goes without saying. I mean, I know I'm known for being a big horror fan, but I'm also a huge sci-fi fan. So, I love Star Wars. It's huge. Another movie that's real big. About a couple of years later, another movie came out that would also be one of my all-time favorites, and that would be Alien, by Ridley Scott. Alien, I remember when it came out, it was... your standard horror movie, like any other horror movie coming out, especially 1979, you had a lot of movies coming out, and Alien was different. It was, wasn't your typical horror movie that was, as part of the group coming out. You had I mean, was it Halloween had just come out, and you started getting a bunch of little slasher movies, and Alien was not one of those films. I actually didn't get a chance to watch it until a few years later when it was on cable. And the one memory I have of Alien, other than the really cool preview for it, involving the egg, basically, was the figurine that they sold. It was a 12-inch figurine of the Alien. I remember seeing it in the store thinking, wow, that is the coolest thing. I wish I'd gotten one, because apparently they're selling for like a ginormous amount of money, like $600, $700. I mean, like, wow, that's an amazing... I mean, collectibles, things like that, that's one of the things you want to look out for. Alien, to this day, still remains one of my all-time favorite movies. And I know I get into discussions with people, Alien versus Aliens, and I'll tell you this right now. To me, they are both equal in terms of they are both at the top of their respective genres. One's sci-fi, one is... I mean, they're both sci-fi movies, but one is horror, one is action. And I know I have a particular favorite Twitter friend of mine who's all about aliens. And yes, you know what? Caledonia Roses, I love Aliens. I mean, I've got stories for Aliens I will tell you later on, but we got to start where, go with the origin story, Just like with, Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. A lot of people think Empire Strikes Back is the better movie, and it probably is. But to me, Star Wars is, that's what got me started. Same thing with Alien, So that's why I've always had a, strong love for Alien. Another movie that came out about the same time, The Thing. Now, The Thing came out 2 years later. Of course, John Carpenter's The Thing. And The Thing is essentially a... of course, you know what it is. It's a sci-fi story. It's very well made. Great cast. Story of a group of Arctic explorers out, and it's, they get something really crazy and bizarre comes into their camp. It starts, taking over. And wow, my memory of The Thing was I remember watching it when it came out. I didn't see it in the theater. I watched it on cable as well, because remember I was like, let me see, how old was I? About 10 years old when it came out. And I remember watching it on cable one time, and they had a voiceover. Literally, I mean, I'm like, what in the hell? By that time, I had watched The Thing like about 5 or 6 times, and I remember there's no voiceover. Like, wow. I mean, what were they thinking? And that's probably one of the late night versions, but that was, But let's go back to The Thing. Great story. Based on the short story by Joseph. Is it Joseph Campbell? Yeah, I think it's Joseph Campbell. And who goes there? And to this day, still one of my all-time favorite movies. I mean, Alien and The Thing and Star Wars are 3 movies I could continuously watch over and over and over again, and I would never get tired of them. I mean, those are some of the greatest movies ever made, and for me, so those are some of the movies that influenced me, and quite a bit. I mean, I love those movies. They are great. They are movies I recommend to people, and even though they've you've got follow-up films and sequels, I still think those are some of the best all time. So those are some of my favorite, films in the horror and sci-fi genre. Now, I'm almost done here, but I wanted to throw one more shout out to Tom Cody. He's a pretty good guy out there, collects posters. And right here, got this in the mail. This is a beautiful poster for Life Force. And for those of you who know me, I've got a rule for Life Force. It's anytime you mention the word Life Force, I've got to have a picture of Matilda May in there, our favorite Nikki space girl. And yes, I will be posting a picture of her after I post this video, because, hey, rules are rules, got to do what I got to do. So, well, I'm going to be closing out and calling it an evening here, because I want to catch another movie, plus I'm trying to get past this Game of Thrones high, like, wow, So if you want to follow me, I'm Losman. You can follow me on Twitter at Losman94. I also have a blog out there that you can go to off of my website, losman.com. Check out my blog, check out my homepage, check out my letterbox, check out my Twitter, check out my Instagrams. I'm Losman94. Losman94 is basically my nickname, and I'll explain the origin of that, in another video. But till then, I just wanted to, send a shout out to y'all and, encourage horror. Go out there, watch more movies. So that we can have some fun discussions. Reach out to me. I love reaching out to people. You could DM me. You can send me email. Just say hey man, what's up? Ask me about a movie. I mean, I haven't seen everything. That's why I've got my Losman 300. But you know what? I look forward to hearing from y'all, and I'm going to go ahead and close out. Wish y'all well, and y'all take care.